It's my great pleasure to welcome Martin Kresels to Hunter College this evening. Martin was born in Los Angeles and received both his BA and MFA from UCLA, which is where I first met Martin in his last year as an undergraduate, I think. He didn't go directly into UCLA's MFA after he took his BA in 1984, but began work as a dancer, a performer with the group Shrimps, which is where some of his earliest explorations of bodies and spaces and their mechanics, and maybe some of his first throwing friends, took place. Martin's abiding interest in bodies and spaces, and in making both bodies and spaces strange, continued into such large-scale sculptural installations as the Tumble Room of 2001 and Dionysian Stage of 2004. These are machines, and Martin's engagement in machines, entropy, sound, and dissolution has produced work that examines the dynamic tension between failure and success, the individual and the group, and the thin line between humor and misfortune. Since 1994, Kresels' objects and projects have been exhibited at museums both nationally and internationally, including in the 1997 and 2010 Whitney Biennials, the Pompidou Center in Paris, the Tingley Museum in Basel, the Kunsthalle Bern, MoMCO Geneva, and MoCA and the Getty Museum of Art in Los Angeles. Martin taught at the California Institute of the Arts for 14 years before joining the faculty at the Yale School of Art as the Director of Graduate Studies in Sculpture in 2012. Please join me in welcoming Martin Kresels.
Thank you, Howard.
You're very welcome.
It's a really great honor to be here, to be the Zabar visiting fellow or Zabar visiting dude or something like that. I guess I need some water. I'm sorry. Of course, I bring my own Yale water. Because once you're at Yale and drink Yale water, if you leave and don't drink it, you shrivel up and die. It's sort of like Dorian Gray. I went to, for my undergrad and grad at UCLA, and when I became a professor at Yale, I got a letter saying, since your terminal degree, which is an MFA, did not come from Yale, but rather came from another school, we're offering you a chance to have a Yale degree. This was a practice started in, I believe it was 1902 at Yale, and other Ivy League schools started. I'm seeing some of my students, or old students here, which is surprising me. It started other Ivy League school. I believe Princeton does this, and maybe Columbia does this. So they have this degree called a Master of Arts Privatum. And so it is given to somebody so that you have a Yale degree, so you can talk to all the other professors who do have Yale degrees. Like, you don't feel shunned or something because you had a degree from a public school. So I have this degree, they have a ceremony with the president handing out the certificate, all in Latin, and I have a Yale degree now. It's like pretty special, and it came into use because I never have picked up my undergraduate or graduate degrees from UCLA, and I was traveling to Taiwan to do something, and they needed a diploma to show that I was an expert in my field, and I didn't have my diplomas, so I just Xeroxed that degree, and it worked. It was pretty great, like this degree that was just given to me for one day. Anyway. It's great to be here for the first doing this lecture, and then for the next 2 days I'm going to be seeing some of you in your studios tomorrow, and then some of you hopefully will be in my workshop on Friday. If those of you who are here wear comfortable clothes and shoes that you can move in, or if you want to be barefoot, but on concrete it's sometimes better to have shoes. So I'm going to start my lecture with part one. Falling down again, and again, and again. Whirling again, and again, and again, and jumping again, and again. Again? Little typo. And again. I guess I'm not a very good proofreader. I guess this brings me to another story about Howard, since Howard was a teacher of mine at UCLA when I was in my last year, and there was a day of working with writing papers on typewriters and not with computers and laser printers and all that. And it was the day before a paper was due. Howard knows this, so this is not a revelation, but I have apologized and been forgiven for what I did. I had an idea for a paper, let's put it that way, but I didn't have all the energy to go through the laying out of the proposal, using the structure of 3 examples and discussing each, and then writing a conclusion. I said, shit, it's like 4 a.m. and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I said, why don't I mark the type of page 7 or whatever it was and have the conclusion, and just hand the conclusion in as if it was pages 1 through 6 were missing. It worked. It really worked. And I feel so bad because he did believe me, and I feel I took advantage of him, and I felt guilty for a lot of years. I finally, about 8 years ago, when were you in Virginia?
Yeah, that would have been 8 years ago.
8 years ago, when I was speaking there, I asked for his forgiveness because I felt I took advantage of his good nature. So let's give a round of applause to Howard. How Humor Might Work, in My Work, by Martin. I'll start with the benign violation theory of humor by Peter McGraw and Caleb Warren, who are 2 psychologists working out of the University of Colorado. This came out maybe about 6 years ago, a paper that they were trying to kind of make a comprehensive study of how humor works. Humor, of course, has been studied for many years and analyzed, and Plato wrote about it, Freud wrote about it. There's all sorts of theories, incongruity theory, there's pattern recognition theory about humor. But according to McGraw and Warren, that no one theory up to that point was able to kind of answer all the aspects of how humor functioned. So their theory that they developed was a benign violation theory, in which 3 conditions must be met. 1, a situation must be apprised as a violation. 2, a situation must be appraised as benign. And 3, and these 2 appraisals must occur simultaneously. And simultaneous means like at the same time, like a song duet. One of the better duets, David Bowie and Bing Crosby. If you've never seen the video of them singing The Little Drummer Boy, you do need to check that out on YouTube. It is quite amazing. So what is a violation? Physical threats are violations, insults slung at a person are violations, grabbing a pussy is a violation. With individuals or within groups, differences in social norms, linguistic norms, and moral norms can be violation. So here we have Princess Leia saying, "I recognized your foul stench when I was being brought aboard." That's from Star Wars. Physical threats and counter threats. I don't know what this counts as. I don't know if that's really a moral norm or or what that counts as. These are about cultural norms and expectations. Hold on, I'm trying to get a piece of paper out of my wallet. That, I just liked that picture. I thought that was an amazing picture of a dummy. And to you, sir. Or this one here. If a dog were to have pants, would they wear them like this or this? This is something I have. These are the things I kind of think about. I mean, I think the idea of like what goes on, like what I'm showing here is not necessarily, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a social scientist, I'm an artist. But these are sort of things that I like to think about in many ways. So anyway, so violations, right? Is that clear? Violations? People are kind of clear on what a violation is? Any questions about that? Okay. So what makes a situation or comment benign? So this is me by a sculpture in Paris that I made. Sculpture I made in Paris. Benign. Adjective, gently, kindly. Her face was calm, benign. Also, good-natured, friendly, warm, affectionate. But I look at it as not is for the humor part that it's not necessarily friendly. It's just not unfriendly. A lot of times. So what I thought. So people understand benign, right? All right, so I just happened to look for images on, if you put in benign, and these are the images that come up. So this is L. Ron Hubbard. What is it? Mr. Big Shot Agent. This is L. Ron Hubbard. Aliens do exist, and billions of their souls, or thetans, have been trapped here on Earth and reincarnated into humans, and this is what makes you sad and lonely and watch fetish porn. This also is really weird under benign, because that is so scary. I mean, that is really scary. Kindness, do you see kindness in that? Does anyone? Am I missing something? Am I missing that that's kindness? Benign girl. This was very strange. I don't know what it is. It's a carrot, I know that, but I don't know why that would be under benign. And then Kermit the Frog. So, how is a violation benign? Okay, one, it's a situation that one norm suggests something is wrong, while an alternative norm suggests it is acceptable. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So, and by the way, that's a piece from 2011 called Party Clown. It is charmed. I have, I'll talk about the charms later, but just to be known that this is an installation shot of it. The head slowly turns. So the photographer here caught it in motion. Okay. Number two, one is weakly committed to the violated norm. Weakly committed to the violated norm. Do you know?
No, go with that one.
Go with that one? So weakly committed to the violated norm, meaning if someone, your friend, really, really loves, what would be good? What would be something that someone would really love? I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of something that we could relate to in a good way. Anderson Cooper, maybe, since, no? Okay, not Anderson. Like pizza. Pizza, people can understand pizza. So if someone really loves pizza, and you have like, oh no, pizza's okay, it's like good. And it could be bad. But so if you made a comment about pizza that this person doesn't have, is not weakly committed, well, if someone made a joke about pizza to you, you are weakly committed to the pizza, right? It can go either way. And someday you might be offended if you're talking about a specific type of pizza, right? That's some favorite pizza joint, as opposed to DiGiorno's frozen pizza. This is Tossing a Friend, Melinda, a series of photographs that came out of the idea of creating a performance that is just recorded for one frame or a photograph. Oh my God, what happened there? Tossing a Friend, Patty. Tossing a Friend, Ryan. Tossing a Friend, Melinda 3. So in these photographs, I think I tossed 7 people total to create 10 photographs, a triptych with Melinda, and the rest are individual. And finally, the violation is psychologically distant. And by psychologically distant, if you go to, it's the idea of temporal distance, meaning it's something that is past in time. Like you could maybe make a joke about the Titanic, maybe. Or the invasion, 1066 invasion, the Norman invasion. You can probably make a joke about that because of distance. Spatial distance, it might be something about area and things like that. Social distance, and hypothetical distance, meaning something that could be or may not be. And so the possibility of it makes you able to have distance. So these are works by the group Shrimps, which is a collaborative I worked on from about 1984 to 1993, almost a 10-year span. It was a collaborative group that was really very important to me as an artist, because I was just out of undergraduate in '84, and working with a group allowed me to work on ideas that I wasn't necessarily so confident with. So it was a real confidence builder to be able to work with other people. It's a very tricky situation, collaborations, because it is both about asserting yourself at times when you feel that you have a good idea, but also there are times when you have to really be able to be self-critical and not just be, sort of, so to speak, egotistical about your ideas. You need to actually be able to have a sense of when your idea, and when to push for it, and when to recognize criticism, and when to recognize that maybe the idea isn't as good as you thought. And so this was I would say, sort of a continuation of undergraduate, at the same time, making pieces through the 80s and into the 90s, mostly doing things at nonprofit art spaces like Lace in Los Angeles, the Kitchen here, what's PS1? Is that PS1? No, PS122. Is that still around?
Yeah.
Performance Space 122. That was on the Lower East Side, I believe. PS122, I don't know, colleges, bars, pubs, outdoor places. It was a great education to be able to do that. So this is the end of part 1. Part 2. I broke this up into sort of different bodies of work because I just didn't want to do a chronology. I've been interested in the idea of the charm as something that is on a charm bracelet, right, that hangs from your wrist, or I guess a charm could also hang from your neck, but something that represents an alliance or an allegiance to something. So a charm, or someplace that you've been, and that you want to have a remembrance of. So, but also a charm could be a talisman to protect, or to create, or to cast a spell. So I was very interested in this object that hung, that hung in the space between, is it rising up, is it falling down, is it in its intermediate space. It's not grounded, right? It's not grounded it's up in the, literally up in the air, but also maybe kind of metaphorically. And so I'm interested in that based on gravity and also on ideas of not being able to completely create a fixed definition. Not necessarily for the audience, but for myself. And in that way, I'm interested in things having kind of a continuous activity and a movement, if not literally, but like a movement of meaning. So it doesn't always work that way, and I think that's good to know as an artist, that things don't always work out the way you think they do. But as an artist, you are still requested to show it. Right? Like, whether it's for a group crit or whether it's like it's the last work that you need for a group show that you're going to be in. And you try your best, and sometimes you don't know how it actually does come out until you've actually seen it work within a group of people, a group of viewers. So these are the first charms that I was interested in. This is they tended to be based on the idea of swag lamps. Do you guys know swag lamps? Okay, a lot of people don't. Swag lamps were something I grew up with. The important thing is they hang from a chain, and then they have a loop of chain attaching it to the opposite wall or something, so that it's the swag, right? The swage, maybe it comes from the word swage, and that was important to have this loop on these. That these were swag lamps, and these are something that I grew up with in the 70s, but I also thought that they had the sense of like a pocket watch, or a hint at like a bracelet. So this is a Death Star lamp. So this is a wire. You can see the Death Star, the thing that the laser, and so it's a Death Star lamp. Here is a black cloud, the cloud of sort of doom. This is Little Boy, which is based on the proportions and the design, the exterior design of the little boy atomic bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki. This is a lion, a stuffed lion, and these were all placed in this show called Charms in a Throne Room. And with this being a throne sitting in the center, and I was thinking of the play Henry IV, and the idea of and it was at the time of George Bush. I tend not to make overtly political work, though sometimes some people make me so frustrated that I'm interested in how those things come about. In some way, my working on this work helps me think about it and come to terms with it myself. So I wanted to set the gallery to be more like how shall I say, like a very minimalist stage setting. That the throne is the center of the stage with these objects, the Death Star light, which is sort of the fantasy of protection. This is the reality of the bomb, which is some existing, the trophy, this is there's no close up, but it's an obedient dog, and then off into in the distance, hanging almost in an alley, is sort of the ill will or the black bile of one's own kind of neuroses and feelings. And so the only thing touching the floor was this throne, which is the centerpiece, and at the same, so these things are kind of always, as you move through them, they're never touching. You can go under them, you see them in all these different places. So I liked the idea of making a stage setting, so to speak, within the gallery. Other charms I've done, this is the Uss Constitution. which is a model of the Constitution warship, then made with spider-like webs to project a larger miasma of like a spider trapped on the wall. A hand maced out of, this is like bricolage made from a chair back. The party clown, which this is almost like a globe, and it turns slowly with a map made of pieces of mirror that then here is a light that shines on it. So as it spins, it projects light. Here's a piece from the Santa Barbara Museum of Art that's in their big atrium. It's a giant, very big charm or mixed charms of some that, one that I pulled from as being an individual piece into making it as part of this other piece of this sort of this fantasy of silver clouds, the bomb, an overturned house, sort of like this disruption or this total kind of chaos created in the air above in this huge airway, in this huge atrium in the museum. This is a vulture. This is like a call. This is a vulture with speakers, coming out of it. And here is a microphone that the viewer can pull down and use to call people to it. And I know we used it during the opening to say hi to people or things like that. I've also used it literally in hanging in suspension for performances. This is choreographer Melinda Ring's work X. This is at you might recognize the space at St. Mark's Church. And this is a chandelier that is constructed, and here on the balcony, this railing that goes all around the performance space, are 2 or 3 other performers, myself included, that create the soundscape for this piece here. And as the piece goes on, these lights slowly drop from the chandelier until the end of the piece, when the lights are near the ground and just lighting the floor and the dancers as they've been through their hour-long performance and hitting exhaustion. Any questions? Okay, well, into part 2. I'm going to talk a little bit about movement works. This is a piece called Macarthur Park, and let's see. So this piece here is a self-portrait of myself as a landscape. These appendages here, my head, the arms, the legs, this is my big stomach here with audio equipment, this is a speaker, and as this turns, all these start to collapse and fall down to the ground. So this is the trio of songs, Macarthur Park, which is about a cake being in the rain. Someone left the cake out in the rain. I don't think that I could take it, 'cause it took so long to make it, and I'll never have that recipe again. Oh no! So this first part of the song is about loss, is about losing something, collapse. Imagine a good thing and then it's gone. So then the second song at first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept about to never live. This is I Will Survive, the Gloria Gaynor version, which if anyone went to discos, this was a very, very popular song. And this is about finding that you have the power, you have the ability to gather control over what you think you've lost. Go out that door, ordering the bad things out of your life, from your life, and going out the door. So I set up a situation which was sort of this sort of like binary, like the bad, and then you take control. And I didn't want it to be like so necessarily specific or kind of ordained in some way that this was going to happen. So I thought it needed some sort of third leg of the triangle to work against. So this is a Carpenter song. You should look up the Carpenters, or Todd Haynes' film about Karen Carpenter, right? Such a feeling's coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, and a sun in my eye. And I won't be surprised if it's a dream. So this was a three-part like audio piece that just sort of collapses and comes back together. And it is something that holds a lot of my interests. I'm interested in how things fall apart. I'm interested in how or why sometimes things stay together. I'm also interested in like the power of the voice or the lack of power in certain people's voices, like my own, and the ability that sound is appreciated differently by the brain than visual art is. And so there's a big body part of my work has sound into it because I think it is accessed differently and creates a different impression. And I think one that maybe is even more direct. I hate to use that word, but direct maybe than the visual. Certain film pieces, Swing Film with Fall, Stingray Medley, which had a soundtrack also. It had actually 22 soundtracks of 43 seconds each, because this is a 43-second loop of myself driving, or riding, I should say, a Stingray bicycle down a street and onto a ramp, and then dumping the bike and thinking about ideas of how music affects how we view something. So the idea of having soundtrack music from Sound Love Theme from Vertigo to Edgar Winter Group Frankenstein, to a lot of different songs to see how things were read. So this was sort of, in a way, this was an experiment of sorts. But the issue was, like, any time that there's a image of a big man on a small bike and dumping it can only be maybe all shades of the pathetic, right? And not much else. So it didn't work in that way. Attempt to raise the temperature of a container of water by yelling at it, a true experiment. So there's a tape player, a cassette tape player to an amplifier that goes to an underwater speaker that is in what is called a jar. This is a Pyrex jar created for the medical industry, 7 gallons of water, sitting on the table, and here's a samovar table with a recording thermometer and a tape that plays myself yelling at the water, with the idea that my voice would vibrate the molecules, much like a microwave oven vibrates molecules to create heat, and therefore my non-specific anger
to raise the temperature
would basically work on
of this water
would affect
by yelling at it. I am trying
would affect an
to raise
inanimate
the temperature
object
of this water
like water. And I was interested in that
I am
aspect
trying
of anger,
to raise the
and to see if
temperature
I could actually make
of this water
that change.
by yelling at it.
So the tape goes on for
I am trying
7 minutes, and you see like the video here, nice close up here, and then
yelling at it.
and as it goes
I am
on,
trying
my voice gets louder and
to raise the
louder.
temperature
I'm getting more angry
of
at
this
this water
by yelling
because
at
it's
it.
not doing what I want it to do, I think.
I am trying
Yes, I'm
to
trying.
raise the temperature
I'm really
of this
trying.
water
I'm really, really trying.
by yelling at it.
I am.
I am
Oh, there we go. Oops. So you see here, this is the recording thermometer. The temperature is going up and down, like 81, 82 degrees. I'm winning. I'm doing this. And I'm showing that my anger can control things outside of myself, and can make the world my place, and I can feel comfortable living in it. Actually, no, I hate being angry. But, so this is the thermometer probe. And so
by yelling at
So it was to me, like, it wasn't an experiment that needed to succeed or fail. It was just something that I think was needed to happen for me, and so that's attempt to raise the temperature. Music machine. This is a piece I did on site in Naples, Italy, for a gallery there. This is a Vespa, which is the kind of which is a ubiquitous form of transportation in Naples. And on that, I mounted a amplifier and a music player, a subwoofer, speakers, and then this windscreen. And then I rode in the city and played music as I drove, American kind of rock ballad standards, to be this kind of ugly cultural American in the old town of Naples. So all the little alleyways are all narrow, and the sound just comes blasting down as you drive down the streets, and this song plays.
One hill makes you larger, and one hill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall. And if you go chasing rabbits and you know you're gonna fall, tell them a hookah smoking caterpillar has given you the call. Call Alice when she was just small.
So this piece, what was interesting is I tend, like, I thought this was, I didn't know how this was going to work, because it sounds like an interesting setup to use, like, to create like these, they have these, like, in LA, like these big cars that have great sound systems, and they are like you listen to whatever anyone's listening to. It's sort of like that Dan Graham piece in Santa Barbara, where he puts a TV monitor of the family on the front lawn, so whatever they're watching, you're watching too. But sound works differently, right? Sound, you can't turn your head away from it. It follows you. It follows you around a corner. It seeps into your subconscious, and it is something that is truly can be awesome or it can be awesomely annoying. And so I never set out to be annoying. I thought it was maybe and maybe this shows a certain kind of arrogance of a culture, right? Of a culture that wants to just spread its culture to other cultures, and driving down these alleyways. But it was interesting because I think there was very mixed. It angered some people, but some people were actually very happy to have their day broken up by having this music running through the city. So it's an interesting piece. And just as a side note, the gallerist I worked with, Massimo Lauro, Massimo Lauro, he doesn't have the gallery anymore because he's a thief. But he is the grandson of the man who started the Lauro line of shipping line, of Achille Lauro fame. But he was a black shirt in Italy who became mayor by promising everyone a pair of shoes, and he only gave people one shoe until they voted for it, and then they got the second shoe. And then he was also a nudist, so he would run his office in the nude in Naples. So he comes from this sort of weird background of having this family of both like kind of bigger than life but also tragic in a way, because the Lauro lines and all this kind of a family empire crumbled. So but Massimo, he basically took that piece, this last piece, and used it. Oh, by the way, that's me there. I should have pointed that out. That's me driving. He took that piece and used it as a sound system beside his pool in Tuscany. Even he doesn't do that in Naples. This is a work Dionysian stage, which was made for a show at the Pompidou called Dionysiac. And the curator was interested in doing a show about Dionysian aesthetics in opposition to Apollonian aesthetics. Who studies aesthetics here? Can you explain those for me, Professor? You volunteered.
In a distinction made by Nietzsche in The Birth of Tragedy, the Apollonian is characterized by that which is bounded and that which is measurable, that which is transparent and clear. And the Dionysian is that which spreads beyond boundaries, which is comes apart or falls apart. And the Apollonian tends to be linked to the beautiful, the Dionysian to the sublime, the Apollonian to the beauty of the work, and the Dionysian to the dissolution of the artist within the work itself. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you very much. What I think he was saying was, like, the Apollonian is the balance of the beautiful, and the Dionysian is shit. At least that's what this curator, I think, wanted to think about, was about punk rock or about abjection. And so I was asked to be in this show, and I was interested not in, I never thought of myself as an artist of abjection. But I was interested in things, how they fell apart, but not necessarily due to kind of those forces, right? So, because I think I'm sort of also bound. I like balance, I like harmony to some aesthetic degree, right? I don't know how I measure it. I don't know if it can be measured. Maybe an aesthetician is someone who works in a beauty parlor. Could maybe tell me like how that works. So this is a nest built out of. It's about 14 feet across and about 12 feet tall, and it slowly turns, and it's made up of household goods, made up of willow and household goods. So everything sort of that is within the home is then used to make another home. So this idea of this vortex, also the vortex, referring to the tornado, the things picked up, the idea of safety and of how a nest is considered, but yet it is the nest is made up of things that come from our place of safety, and as it just sort of slowly spins, it also has how else can you say the bigness of stolidity of an object that is not just greater, but has a greater sense of weight and a greater sense of solidness. So it's well situated, right? It sits. It's not flighty, even if it's moving. And so there's this sense of, for me at least, with it, both of solidness, but also because it moves of transcendence in some way. So these are some of the things made up of things from my household, things that I took from other people's houses. Well, okay, I didn't take them, I asked for things. Clothing, and like these are at the time, my son's slippers, a maraca someone gave him. There's dishes, there's things we bought. And so we gathered all these boxes, and this was an interesting thing to do, is how do you like make a mess at the same time? How do you remake it all the time, right? Like the things are all there. They're all boxed. They have like, we made little like trays with a cutout foam so that broken pieces of dish can go in. And so this idea of something that is familiar, the familiar within your lives, the familiar of the things that you do now becomes something else, right? They become art. And then what does that actually mean? Like, what does that mean to yourself? What does that mean to those around you? And I find that transition interesting from a point of view as both someone who is not a collector of objects, but someone who makes objects and treats them as if they're things that I've made and not precious. So anyway, this is from 5 songs from the 2010 Whitney Biennial. I was charged with creating stages for the lobby gallery, and then making a performance series to work on it. And so what I was interested in these, I'd made other stages before as sculptures or as part of artwork, but what I was interested, but they failed for me in many ways because they were more staged. They are more staged. I hope we can finish. Okay, I have a limited amount of time. More stages than they were sculptures, in my opinion. So I made 5 different places. This is like speakers. This is a microphone. This is like a microphone island. This is a prop room which you enter through the top. This is like an orator's podium, and then a table, a large table. And so these were all very movable through this space. and they all were not easy to perform on. And the idea that to take away the ease of performance was to make it difficult for people to perform. So that the idea was that they were not at home on the space, that they were an extension of the sculptural space. That their presence on the space, it finished or at least made that sculpture for that moment. So this is like the Whitney's photo for me, but like, so I booked people, bands were booked, performances, audio pieces. This is a lecture on Lacanian lecture on the mirror stage. So these different things occurred. And I think in some ways I was in California for a lot of it because that's where I lived at the time. But I think they went off well in general. I'm going to skip over this and go to I'm just going to show you part 4. I think I'll finish the lecture because to leave time for questions of images and that have been somewhat inspirational to me. The Hang in There Baby. I had that in my room for many years when I was a youngster. Oscar Schlemmer, the Triadic Ballet, which is an amazing. I guess it's not. It maybe was considered futurist in some ways, but not really. It was he involved with Victory Over the Sun also?
No, he's at the Bauhaus.
Oh, he was at the Bauhaus. Sorry. Yeah, now. So Oscar Schlemmer. These are costumes for the Triadic Ballet. Meredith Monk, because of especially because of her voice. She had this amazing voice that wasn't about using voice as voice, right? Not voice as sound and voice as music as opposed to singing songs. This is where, when I lived in Playa del Rey growing up, the airport condemned many houses where I lived, and eventually we had to move, but our house was brick, so it didn't get to, but many of the houses where I lived literally were raised, put on wheels, and trucked away. So that the houses, not just the families, moved away, like, bye Steve Dennis, it's been nice playing football with you, nice watching Speed Racer. But also the houses sometimes moved. Trisha Brown roof piece. I know there seems to be a split sometimes. Between Yvonne Rainer and Trisha Brown, like Trio A and Water Motor. But I think that I like some of the kind of the outlandishness of Trisha Brown's work, walking on the wall, walking down a building. In this case, this is the roof piece. I want to make this. I want to make a motorcycle made out of 4x4s and 2x4s. I think that's amazing. Chris Burton's Velvet Water. I got a chance to study with Chris when I was an undergrad. He taught an installation class, which was a brilliant, brilliant class. And what he didn't necessarily teach anything about technique, so to speak, about how do you set something up, but he talked about practicalities a lot. He was a very practical guy. I think, Judy, you asked, did he have a gun when he taught? And he had gotten rid of it by the time I got there, but they used to joke, he used to carry a briefcase down the hallways and he had a gun in it. And people go, Chris, do you have your gun today? And he'd point the briefcase at them. He also, someone took his first drawing class, and when he took the class to his studio, and they drew big buds of pot. that was the still life. So Chris was an interesting character, but he was also very practical and pragmatic, and I really appreciated that. I think informed me a lot. If I was going to do something, I needed to learn how to make it happen if I had an idea. Corky's making coffee. And this scene from Metropolis is just sort of amazing. Or this photograph from Metropolis. And then remedial Christian parenting, are your children playing with Lucifer's testicles? The truth about Easter eggs. And I will end it there. Thank you.